Kravitz. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Good evening and welcome to episode 242 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your proud host, Howard Kravitz. Thanks for joining us on a very special night for several reasons. We have two pieces of breaking news, one in particular that I cannot wait to tell everyone at home about. And no, it has nothing to do with any national events that are going on. We have important, exciting, positive news about the podcast that I can't tell you. I can't wait to tell you about. We'll be telling you about it here in just a minute. Please make sure you subscribe on the bottom right hand side of the screen. We're over 1,900. We are less than 100 now away from 2,000 for 2K. If you watch this show and you are not subscribed, please make sure that you do that. Also hit that notification bell, which will tell you when new content will arise. Smash that like button. We greatly appreciate it. It'll send people to our YouTube channel. You can follow me on Twitter on my name tag @HKravitz, and scrolling at the bottom of the screen, contact me through email with questions, comments, concerns, hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. Of course, you can listen through podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. We have fantastic power picks. Look below the video player. You guys know all about them. If you don't, there's information below the video player. They rock it out as usual. We have a fantastic website as well, hhhracingpodcast.com. Everyone should check that also. Next week, we're going to have 3 shows. As of right now, the plan is to have 2 live shows and 1 taped show, but we're going to be covering Keeneland, Aqueduct, and Santa Anita for all their big Derby preps. It's the last major 100-point Derby prep weekend. We'll be covering it like a glove, I guarantee. Check out the show times. You can see right now at the bottom of the screen, the plan is for 2 shows Thursday and 1 on Wednesday. That will be officially determined later on. So we actually have a guest that's been on here every Thursday, but this time we're going to have him on for the whole show. Jim Miller will be with us for the entire show, including helping us handicap Oaklawn, which we're very excited about. And he might, just might, tip out a possible winner in the White Sox Houston Astro opener today. Is my Cubs, of course. I mean, of course, we took care of business. Shut up, baby. Chicago Cubs, World Series champs. I mean, of course. Jim might have a little bit of an issue with that as a Sox fan. But anyway, we might talk about that as well. Let's get into the big news for the podcast. And I need to bring on my 2 wonderful co-hosts that have been with me since May of last year officially, although they've been on before May and just fans of the show before they became co-hosts. And of course, my life and the life of the podcast has never been the same and has improved tremendously. And if you don't know, just ask Pete and Paul. They will tell you. Let's bring on, I'm going to try this again in the same order that we did Tuesday without screwing it up. From the wonderful Commonwealth of Massachusetts and award-winning journalist for the Saratoga Special. I did that well. Mr. Paul Halloran, and some guy from the East Coast of Maryland who is one hell of a handicapper and a real good guy as well, Pete Visco. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Hey, Howard. What's going on, guys?
Well, I got to tell you what's going on. Let's just get right to it. We have 2 pieces of news we want to talk about for a few minutes. I'll bring on Jim Miller. Hope we have a lot of people already listening and watching. Please feel free to comment in the chat before the news. Everyone's like, what's the news? Michael Austin is here. Sean Kane wants to know the big announcement. Brad Anderson, Twitterverse is a buzz. I'm throwing some high heater teas. You better believe it, Brad. And Stephen Vanderbrook is here amongst with a lot of people. Let's get to it. Piece of news number 1. I inquired about achieving something and getting something for the podcast, and it is in the tentative stages. It has been pre-approved. What has been pre-approved? The HHH Racing Podcast has been pre-approved, so not official, but pre-approved for a media credential to the 2023 Kentucky Derby, Kentucky Oaks, and all its festivities all week long. That's right, baby. The HHH Racing Podcast is going to the Derby. Hope pretty much guaranteed. Pretty much guaranteed. What does that mean for people other than me? Because people are like, great, we're happy for you, Howard, but what does that do for me as the listener or viewer of the podcast? Honestly, and Paul can speak to this, it does a lot. What it does for the Derby, if it's approved, and we want to thank in advance Churchill Downs Incorporated for making that happen if it happens. It recognizes us as an official media organization. And of course, Paul is a real life journalist. I have a journalism degree. We obviously do cover newsworthy events here on the show. So although we obviously do a lot of handicapping, we do interviews and whatnot. And we do cover newsworthy events, of course, in horse racing. That will allow us during the Derby week to get full access to trainers, owners during the media time. At the track, we will actually have access to the paddock and all other things that the media will have access to, including press conferences and everything else. So what that will do, obviously, is give you at home a chance, not live though, but obviously taped in this case, a chance for us to tell stories about what happened at the Derby, get exclusive interviews and whatnot. And Paul, you can probably speak to this more than any of us. What that also allows us is a better chance to get a media credential at most other big horse racing events, because we are established. We can say we got a media credential from Churchill Downs, and will allow us to cover these events more in depth. And when we go live on Saturdays, Paul, I know you were at the Pennsylvania Derby, for example. Now one of us can have much easier access to live events for the viewers at home. It's very exciting, Paul.
Yeah, and I will tell you, historically, how the Derby is the tough one. There was a day that you had to be a member of the National Turf Writers Association to get a to get a credential, of which I am, by the way. So Pete, now, Pete, I'm going to have to get one just because.
I
right?
mean, you can't let him show you up
Right,
like that
just
as an
because.
actual
Yeah,
journalist. You can't.
They're
do
already
that.
coming out, by the way. Sorry, Pete, but Brad Ennis wants to know if he can be a production assistant. Listen, here's what we're gonna do, everyone. There is one possible credential available for the Derby. We are going to start the bidding at $100. Put in the line. No, I'm just kidding. Totally kidding, everyone. How much would you pay to come to have a media credential at this year's Derby week? Just kidding, folks. We are not putting it for sale. I cannot do that. That is illegal. But anyway, a lot of congratulations to people. Jim Pillar's wishes congratulations. The entire group worked hard to establish this podcast and the fruits of our labor. Jim, in all seriousness, if and when it happens, because it's not official, it's just pre-approval. But from what I understand, that means it's relatively official. Guys, I almost shed a tear. And I know that might sound a little corny or whatever, but it's sort of the culmination of a lot of hard work. We've established ourselves as a real horse racing entity out there, and it really is a big deal. So, Roshan, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Jeff Wilson, thank you. So it's very exciting. We will let everyone know if and when becomes official, and hopefully, guys, we'll be able to be live at more horse racing events. Of course, Paul can have access to more horse racing events, but Paul doesn't always have a chance to travel. So Pete and I and whoever else will give us a chance, Pete, to go to some places and get exclusive coverage. Now, the other news that is really not for today, because you guys know about it already, but the public does not. We've talked about Crownsway Racing quite a bit. It's been an official sponsor of the podcast for the last 2 months. Kyle Roscoe talked about it on the Bettin and Boozin show. If you do not watch Bettin and Boozin, please go back and watch last night's episode 13, starting at about the 55-minute mark. Because the second piece of news is myself, Paul, Pete, and of course Kyle's already part of it, are official partners of Series E of Crownsway Racing. We have a piece of 3 2-year-olds that was just bought at March OBS sale, 2 colts and a filly, a copper bullet colt, a very exciting Buchero colt, and a Gormley filly. Again, watch Kyle Roscoe's show. Pete, you already have had shares with my racehorse, so you still do. But this is a little bigger piece of the pie. Paul, you've had horses, but Pete, this is something we all can now cheer on together. It's very exciting.
Yeah, it's fun to have all of us involved in the same set of horses, so we can now all cheer instead of we've all done our own individual things or we've all had our own individual cheering. But this will be great. They're like our mascot now. The official HH Racing Podcast mascots will be these horses. Hopefully, we can get all three of them to the track, and that would be fantastic.
Do we need to change our logo to instead of 3 people, 3 horses? We might.
Well, let's let them all run first and see if any of them could win first. Then maybe we'll start talk about changing logos and stuff.
And in case people are wondering, what happened to Adelphi Racing and Matt Gutierrez? Absolutely nothing. They are still sponsors of the show. We're going to be talking a lot more about Adelphi Racing, guys, also coming up in the next few months. And I have several pieces of horses with Adelphi, and actually a lot of them will be running very soon, guys, including funny how, Paul, in the grade 3 race on Wood Memorial weekend. So that's very exciting, filly and mare race. But we got a lot to talk with Adelphi. Congrats to anyone out there who is a part of Series E with Crownsway. So, guys, we are moving up. We are movers. We are shakers. It really is exciting. And someone that will help us with our excitement tonight and help us get through the Oaklawn card is the hardest working man in horse racing. Just finished a long day at Hawthorne, and I invite Jim on for the whole show. He's like, hell yeah, I'll come on for the whole show. I love talking to you guys. Live from his home in his White Sox regalia. Let's bring him on right now. Jim Miller, happy opening day, Jim.
Happy opening day to you guys, too. Your Cubs won today, Howard. I'm not
Yes,
a Cubs hater by any means. They were actually very impressive in victory. And they beat a good team. They beat a good pitcher in the Brewers. I am a Sox fan. The greatest White Sox prop bet to bet all season long is Dylan Cease over for strikeouts. I think he has 8 through 4 innings already. He's been dominant tonight. He's really
How are they
good.
doing? Are they winning?
No score through 4, so we'll take it against the Astros. But a good start.
Right.
But first off, congratulations. People don't understand just how important this is and how big of a feat it is to be able to get to cover these major events. So to be able to get credentialed for the Derby is something that's very cool. And especially this year when you have the new paddock involved, a lot of new things kind of going around what's happening at Churchill Downs. It's a massive event. It's something that, like you said, this helps you grow to even bigger events down the road. But it's an awesome job that you've done with the podcast to grow everything in that. So very, very cool. And then secondly, horse ownership is one of the most rewarding things that you can have in the sport. I owned horses for 12 years. I worked for Midwest Thoroughbreds for a stint and had a hand in kind of the careers of Work All Week and the Pizza Man. So I've gotten to see it, and the jubilation and excitement from having your horse go out there, race, and win. It's really, really cool. It's very exciting. You don't have to have any money on the horse. So good luck to all of you guys. Crownsway, they're awesome partners. The first trainer I ever met in the industry 30 years ago was a guy by the name of Gene Cilio. Gene was the trainer for Crownsway and just a tremendous guy, welcoming me in, taught me so much about the industry and really got me started. So I'm always just going to have a special place in my heart for Crownsway and all of their horses too.
They are on an incredible run. I mean, they've won 5 in a row, Jim. I don't care if you're Peter Brandt, Klarovich, whatever. To win 5 in a row for a stable, not a trainer, a stable, that is not easy to do, especially when they don't have a big stable. Right. So it's really impressive what they've done. Smokin' Jay, by the way, for fans of Crownsway, Smokin' Jay is the most talented horse they have. A very good turf sprinter. He'll be running at Keeneland, I believe the second or third week of the meets in a big allowance race, and then maybe move on to a stake race during the Triple Crown races. So either at Churchill, Pimlico, or Belmont. So very excited for Tony Rallo and the boys. Again, watch episode 13 last night from Bettin and Boozin at about the 55-minute mark is when the Crownsway segment came on. Guys, we have a lot to talk about. We've got not only are we going to talk about Hawthorne after Oaklawn, so stick around after our Oaklawn Arkansas Derby coverage here. But we are going to discuss the Arkansas Derby late pick 5 tonight. It's an incredible pick 5. It's highlighted by the $1.3 million. Wow. Not million dollar, $1.3 million Arkansas Derby. And of course, there's also the fantasy stakes for the girls we're going to be talking about. So guys, let's just jump right in. I don't think we have anything else to talk about here. A lot of people are anxiously awaiting our opinion. So let me share the screen here and we'll get it started right now. Here we go. All right, we'll go full screen. Let me take off this banner also, and let me get our picks up on the screen as well, and we can rock and roll. It's going to start in race 9. Boom, there we go. The first race of the late pick 5 on Saturday at Oaklawn starts at approximately 5:55 Eastern Standard Time with a maiden special weight, $110,000 main special weight. It is, ironically, for 3-year-olds. They're going a mile and a 16th. You can see it's a big field of 10. And let me hit the refresh button so we get the morning lines. There are the morning lines. By the way, the first time I've seen the morning lines, I'm not going to speak for anyone else out there. The morning line favorite, as I figured, we the number 5, Seeking Unity for McPeak and Flavian Pratt. Jim, as our guest tonight on the show, you'll go first. You're going to go with the number 1, Night Effect. This is the first-time starter for Riley Mott, son of Bill Mott, and Martine Garcia. What do you like about this first-time starter, Jim?
Here's the thing about it. Normally, I don't like first-time starters, especially on the inside. But you're looking at a horse that's an OBS purchase, $330,000. And when you look at a race like this, you tend to wonder, okay, can you really point for a debut race for a maiden race? You can when it's $110,000 pot. And that's the thing about it with Night Effect is you look at the training pattern leading up to this. The training pattern has been pretty solid, but the last 2 works were really good. One of them coming from the gate. That was back on March the 14th. And this is a race where you have a field of 10 where there's not a ton of early pace to me. And when you're stuck on the inside, especially debuting, really your main option is you have to go. So I'm thinking Night Effect and Garcia are going to have to just get sent away from the inside. The gate drill shows that this horse may have a little bit of speed from the gate. Lasix for the debut as well. And that's just kind of the reason I went with this one on top, hoping the horse can scamper away from the get-go, hoping the rail's good early on. You're going to have a wet track on Friday as rain is expected, a drying out track on Saturday, usually inside, maybe a little bit better. So we'll see what we get here out of Night Effect.
Riley Mott is an up-and-coming trainer. He's a young guy. He's obviously got some good genes. It's never easy to win first time out, but those works do stick out, Jim. And as you correctly pointed out, $330,000 buy is an expensive purchase. So I let the board be your guide, would be my opinion on the one, and see how much he's bet. Pete, let's go to you. You're going to go with the number 6, Pete.
Actually, I think those are the wrong. I think those look like my Gulfstream pick. So I don't know if you actually grab the other ones.
Oh boy. I think that's what you sent, but maybe okay. Well,
no, I'm looking. Yeah, I sent it's probably 2 texts ago. So the recent text. So I have the 5. No. I'll jump in. Unfortunately, I have the favorite, Seeking Unity. And again, I did handicap these pre-morning lines.
What's your top 3, Pete?
I have 5, 9, 1. In this
you'll have to do that for every race. I apologize.
Yeah, no, that's no big deal.
I'm sure it's my fault. Had a lot of things going on today.
Oh, I know it is, but I'm not gonna. I don't want to rub it in, but that's okay. So the 5, the 5, Seeking Unity. Not a whole lot to say. I mean, the horse has just been in the last 3, all in 2023, has been right there. And you look at the last 2 losses, loses to King Russell, loses to Interlock Empire, who are both going later in the Arkansas Derby. So those are quality losses. This horse is pretty tactical, has done everything right. The only thing you don't love to see sort of decreasing buyers like that. But I think in this field, which isn't the strongest in the world, I think that still gives this horse an advantage just based on the company it's been keeping.
This is a horse that I've been traditionally trying to beat lately and somehow not beating, that kind of 0-4-4, 0-5 horse that I'm trying to get sneaky with. I'm using him as an A also, Pete. Some of it's because of the field, to be honest, but I agree. I don't like a McPeak horse that's decreasing in buyers. That is not a good sign. I think he's going to be over bet, but I have to use him as an A for all the reasons you said.
And he picks up Pratt too.
Nominated too. Yeah.
And picks up Pratt, which is always, is always nice. But yeah, I don't, you try and beat these, but again, I don't mind a horse who's knocking on the door and losing to horses that maybe you're supposed to lose to, as opposed to, even though this horse was the favorite, but that says something in its own, that it was a favorite against a couple of decent horses as well.
Paul, I always knew you were an astute man, but when I saw your picks, and you also picked the 15-1 morning line, number 2 Auto Glide that I picked, I was like, I tip my cap, sir, because that makes me feel a lot better. I don't know if we're going to go down with the ship, Paul, or we're going to win at 10-1 to open up this leg. But you talk about why you like Autoglide on top for Asmussen and Isaac Castillo. This is a Tis Now. This is a horse by Tis Now out of a Malibu Moon dam.
Yeah, and we didn't have the morning lines, as you mentioned. And I was surprised that when I saw the morning line, that this horse was this high. Started on turf. I'm not sure why. The breeding is more suited for dirt. Maybe they wanted to get a longer race, so maybe they just needed to race this horse. He did not run badly. Second around from the far outside, got over second around, and actually was just about on the lead mid to late stretch and ran out of gas a little bit. The pace was honest enough. Asmussen, second time starters, turf to dirt in maiden races, wins at a 29% clip. There have been 2 next out winners out of that maiden race. And the winner of the maiden race, Mayfield Strong, came back to run 4th in a 2-year-old stakes race at Kentucky Downs. So having said all of that, I am going to try to get this horse home. I think he'll be certainly no worse on dirt, if not better, and certainly no worse at a shorter, not at a shorter distance, at basically the same distance, stretching out a 16th. So that's, I'm going to take a swing with this horse, Howie.
Paul, you and I are thinking exactly alike. In fact, this is a horse I'm going to talk about in the Power Pick 6 weekend. I agree with you completely. I don't have inside intel, but it completely makes sense to me why he went on the turf first time, because there are no 2-turn dirt races at that time of year as 2-year-olds. This is clearly a 2-turn dirt horse by the breeding, by the connections, just by everything. I love Tis Now, one of my favorite horses. I showed the replay. He ran perfectly fine. It was a fast pace going 2 turns. He was up close, got a 51 buyer. That can easily become a 70, 75, whatever buyer after this long layoff. He's been working well. He's got inside tactical speed. Is he ready, Paul? I'm not sure. But to be honest, other than the 5, I'm really not scared of anyone in this field. And we're going to get a price. Any quick final thoughts by Pete and Jim about the 2?
Hold on. Actually, you guys will laugh. This was my last cut to get under the ceiling, because I think I was at whatever 108 on my ticket. So This was my cut. So I had this horse as an A as well. So sadly, all 3 of us are thinking the same here. I just didn't put it in my top 3, but for me, it was going to be on the A line of my pick 5.
Well, let's get real confirmation from the real horse racing guy here on the show. Jim, do you give this horse a look?
No. No, not at all. I didn't like.
Well, Jim, it's been nice having you on the show.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'll see you in about 15 minutes.
Enjoy the rest of the game, Jim. Enjoy the rest of the game.
Still no score. Here's for me. All right, Asmussen has 2 in the spot. Tyler Gaffleone's riding Route Runner. To me, I figured Gaffleone was going to be on the horse that he felt that he had the better shot with in the race. So that was the one reason that I looked that way. I don't like the fact that we haven't seen the horse back since that race. That was the only reason that I stayed away. 3rd week of July, you ran what was a very respectable race, and there were many, many, many options since that to make the return, and the horse hasn't run back. So that was the main reason I stayed away. You're coming back first time Lasix as well, so the horse either bled in that start or bled in a workout since. But that was the main reason that I stayed away from Autoglide, just for the fact that Gaffleone rides another, and this horse hasn't started back. And now I'll see you in 45 minutes.
Jim, it's a fair point. I do want to mention at the top of the screen for the viewers that Castillo with Asmussen is 16% on the win end, as we can see, in 48% of the money, with an average payoff of over 3-1. So although obviously he's not as big a name, he's a good young rider that Asmussen has been using. But your point is taken. I just think I think he's interesting. Paul, he's an A for me, believe it or not. And I don't know. To me, it's mainly 2 and 5. There's others that can win, like Jim's 1, but I don't know. We're going to move on. I just think the 2 is fascinating, as does Jim and Pete. Apparently, let's go on to the next leg, guys. The next leg, and Pete. Sorry, who are your top 3? About Pete?
I have 3-1-6 in the next one.
Okay. Gonna apologize to everyone at home for the slight delay on that, but hey, we're human. Shit happens. There we go. Okay, let's go to the next leg, guys. The next leg is the fantasy. Let's go full screen. It's a grade 3. It's a huge Kentucky Oaks prep. $600,000 is the purse. We talked about 3-year-old fillies last night, Tuesday night, Jim, on the show with the Gulfstream Park Oaks, because other than Wet Paint, who's in this race, these 3-year-old fillies have been very tough to figure. No one's really stood out. This is a big field of 10. The morning line 8-5 favorite, and the current anti-post favorite in the Kentucky Oaks betting, the number 6, Wet Paint, Cox and Pratt. We are all going with that horse, except for the astute Pete Visco. So I'll tell you about Pete. You tell us why we're all wrong. You are going to the number 3, Towhead, Maker, and there's our guy we just talked about, Mr. Castillo. How is this horse going to upset the field?
Yeah, it's funny because I love Wet Paint. I love monster closers. You know that. So I love this horse. But in a race where I think, Wet Paint has a couple questions aside from the fact that she seems to just love the wet tracks, and that's where she's done her best running. And she just doesn't tower over the field from a buyer standpoint. So I look at the 3, Towhead. If you look at the last one, Wet Paint sort of beat her up a little bit. But if you look at the last 4 races, 4 back in the slop, finishes second, maiden special weight, comes back on a fast track, breaks the maiden, then moves up to optional claimer 80, wins again on a fast track. Then you go back to the slop and doesn't run as well. So I'm just taking the shot here to say maybe this horse just didn't love the sloppy track. I mean, didn't run poorly by any stretch, but maybe that's just not her thing. And now if you're getting this horse at 10-1, who 2 back has popped the same buyer as the 8-5 favorite, then I'm taking a shot thinking if we can turn this around with the 3 and maybe Wet Paint is better just on the sloppy track and is a little bit more normal or human on a dry track, we'll take a shot. I mean, they're both A's to me. It's not like, it's not a lock or anything. It's just, I like to take a chance with a 10-1 shot if I can, because there's questions and the big favorite doesn't tower over the field from, say, a figure standpoint.
Let's see, a 3-year-old filly with figs that don't tower over the field. That's going to be a big favorite. Have we seen this? Yes.
Yeah.
Who's your filly?
So that's why Wet Paint wins for fun, because I didn't do it last time.
Well, but this horse has proven that she can win after being bet. So I have Towhead in the mix, but certainly not as an A. But Maker is very capable. If she runs the 2 back to that 82 buyer, she fits here. Paul, let's go to you. We don't need to talk for 15 minutes about Wet Paint. I do have to show the replay because Jim and Paul, that last effort to me was so much better than the 83 fig. It was on wet, granted, no doubt, and it's going to be dry on Saturday. But this was just super impressive. You see there are a lot of horses coming out of that race, about 7 of them that are coming back. Wet Paint is the 7, Paul. I will go right to the stretch run, and you can see Wet Paint just weave herself through. She's all the way back here, and it was not a lightning fast pace, just ultra impressive.
Yeah, right here, you're thinking, this horse at 8-5, it just is simply not winning. Got to get a little lucky. Pratt obviously made the decision to stay on the rail, and so far so good. You'll see this trip he gets, but still on this type of track, that's still a lot of ground to make up. And now you'll just watch her come in between horses, bobbing, weaving. The 5 helps out a little by going directly to the right. But, just watch, just pull away. Yeah. And I think in an odd way, Howard, the fact that this horse has never run on fast dirt, you might get a better price than you have a right to get. You might get that morning line, which I think would be an absolute steal. That is a question. Everyone can read the form. The horse has literally never run on real dirt. I'm not counting the synthetic. Yeah. So as a result of that, and of course, Daddy Blame, there should be no reason why this horse isn't going to like real dirt. So yeah, I didn't get clever here, other than I threw the 5 in third to get on the board as a price. My guy Ray Lou riding for the coach who's been doing pretty well and has the blinkers coming on. But yeah, I think the 6 is tough, and should she win, she goes to the Oaks as the favorite, I believe.
Jim, before I get your opinion, I'll just quickly give mine. This is a stone cold single. This is lone A for me in an ABC. I have no B's at all. I'm going to live and die pretty much. I do have a few C as extreme backups. My question for you, Jim, I don't know if you feel that strongly. My question for you, Jim, is I always feel a little bit more risky or hesitant to do a stone cold single on a closer, just because she doesn't have tactical speed. She's going to have to go by 7 or 8, but she's done it before, and she just looks like she's tons the best in this spot to me.
Well, and here's the scary thing about it. You go back and we were watching the replay, and you were right. They didn't go overly quickly in that race back on the 25th, and Wet Paint still came flying through, and the stride was different from any other horse once the horse got clear at about the 16th pole. This race has so much more early pace than what you saw back in that day in the Honeybee. To me, there's 4 or 5 that can go out there and just kind of push things along and keep things honest. And you tend to wonder if somebody's going to think I have to try to steal it to win. And there may be 2, 3, 4 horses that are going on and thinking that way. Can we go back to the stretch, though, of that last race, Howard, if you don't mind?
Yep.
And it's because I want to talk about the horse that Pete mentioned and Towhead in there, only for this reason. When you look back in the stretch and you see Wet Paint coming by Towhead, Wet Paint is going straight and strong the whole way through.
Towhead's the 2. Sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
Towhead's
the 2.
Where is Towhead here?
And
Towhead's on the inside
right now on the inside. But what you're going to see with Towhead, I don't know how much this horse really liked the footing down along the inside, because you can see kind of the heads bobbing back and forth a little bit. They want to go inside, then they want to go outside, and the horse never really seems comfortable here. So you see Towhead now duck inside, and then they're like, okay, well, not sure about the inside, and then the head cocks outward, and then the horse comes outside, and then now Wet Paint's passing by, and then you just kind of see the horse drift in and out a little bit, and I tend to wonder how much the horse handled the footing there. So maybe a fast track, maybe moves up a horse like Towhead a little bit. Can they beat Wet Paint? It's going to be very hard. But like you mentioned, when you're a closer, so many things can happen. Traffic can happen. Anything along those lines makes it a little bit tougher. But I think Wet Paint probably is a standout. But Towhead is actually a horse that I picked second in there, and I thought the horse had a shot at a price too.
I see that. I've got Towhead as a C as in cat, just because I respect the connections and I like the effort 2 back. I mean, 3 lengths is really not that much, but with the other speed, I mean, like you said, Jim, that sure seems like it would help Wet Paint. And Paul, I totally agree with you. Just because a horse hasn't done it on dry doesn't mean they can't. I mean, so I think that's a ridiculous notion. If this horse is, we talked about value on this show a lot, and we're going to move on, guys, but let me just quick whip around. What is your value line on Wet Paint? In other words, what would Wet Paint be in your mind? Right now, she's 8-5 in the morning line. We'll just go around. Sorry, I did it. I just said the opposite. We'll go around that way. Paul, Pete, Jim, what is Wet Paint in your morning line, Paul?
Well, value to me, if you get the morning line at 8-5, I think that's good value on this horse.
Okay, so you have Wet Paint at like what, even money, 4-5?
I would say about 6-5.
Okay, Pete.
Yeah, actually, that's exactly what I was thinking as well.
Jim?
Wholeheartedly agree. If you get 8-5, I think that's a great price on the horse. And I don't think you will get it. I think even money 6-5 is what you're going to see.
Yeah, Wet Paint is like 4-5 in my morning line. I know that's very low, and some people might think that's crazy. If I get 6-5, I'm putting a win bet on this horse. And again, Jim, as we talked about, value does not mean a 10-1 shot. It's
right.
It's your opinion of the horse compared to what they go off at, which could be twice as much. It could be a 2-1 instead of an even money, whatever. So good luck to those who are going to Wet Paint. Jim and Pete don't feel quite as strongly about Wet Paint, from what I gather, if that's fair to say, guys, than Paul and myself. Let's go on to the next leg, guys. The next leg is race 11. Let me switch the banners. Pete, who do you got in your top 3, sir?
I have 1, 2, 12.
1, 2, 12. Got it. Save that. Bring up the banner. There we go. Full screen. I've got this podcast thing down once in a while. Allowance race, 6 furlongs, 3-year-olds and up. This is an N2X. It's a big field. It's one of those typical really good allowance races at Oaklawn. It's only a purse of $125,000, by the way. Field of 12. Morning line favorites on the outside. The number 12, favorite outlaw, Chris Hartman, Francisco Arietta. Jim, let's go to you because you've got a horse that none of us have. Is that correct, Jim?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
Here's one thing I want to make note of, which is really interesting. Of my many duties in my 30 years of racing, one of the jobs that I had was I was a jockey agent. So you look at jockey choices in races, and Francisco Arietta chooses the 12th favorite outlaw for Chris Hartman. His last the two inside horses he rode also. He rode Go West in that last start out to a victory. He rode Breslau to the last out to a victory. Both posted a stronger speed figure than what you got out of favorite outlaw on the outside. So it's interesting that he goes that route with that one. But yeah, I'm away from all of you guys apparently for my selection here. Christian Torres has had a great meet at Oaklawn Park, and he rides the 5 Ultimate in this spot. Ultimate's an interesting horse for me just because, again, I think you might get the right setup for this race. The inside 2 horses I thought could show some speed. I thought Dr. Perry could show a little bit of speed, maybe Emerald Forest, maybe Absolute Chaos. And because of that, a horse like Ultimate, who's been consistently going 3/4 of a mile and running some pretty consistent figures, might be able to pick off some horses late. And it's just one of the things. I think you get a little bit of an upgrade with Christian Torres in the saddle because he's been so good this year. You're going to get a little bit more of a price as well. I think you'll get every bit of that 10-1.
Hey, Jim. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
you're going to probably say the same thing I was going to say. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Pete. Really, go ahead.
I was going to say I was knocking around this horse too for the top 3. It was really close to put this one on there for everything Jim said, and also those last 3 races were on off tracks. You go back 4 back on the last time this horse ran in a fast track. Similar company, and it might actually be the same.
It's a career best figure.
It's a little bit low. Yeah, career best figure, runs a really nice race, and didn't even have a ton of pace to close into that time. It was moderate. It wasn't the worst. It was a good closer pace, but not like heated up. And if he can run back to that, then why not at 10-1? And maybe just we always talk about the form getting muddied up, and maybe the off track muddied this horse's form up a bit. Sorry, Howard. Go ahead.
No, Jim, ultimately, I use this horse as a B. I thought I might get a look from Paul, but apparently he's, as usual, not listening to me. That's okay. Keep doing your thing, Paul. Paul, it was just another bad pun. Now you know how my students feel all the time. Anyway, I have this horse as a B, Jim. I agree with everything you said. I think he's fascinating. My only concern, Jim, is no works and coming back pretty quickly. So maybe they just think the horse is in good shape and doesn't need to work. I'm sure he's been jogging around, but it's a bit of a quick turnaround with no works. That is my only concern for this horse. I like that pick. Paul, let's go to you. Paul, you have got the 1 in this race who Pete has on top also. Jim has 3rd. I have third? I have 2nd. This is a very likable horse. Go West for Calhoun Gutierrez. Your guy, Raylu, who just won the riding title at the fairgrounds. This looks like a fast horse who's got the rail. Nothing wrong with either one of those 2 things.
And interestingly, Howard, this race and the last race is a split race. You'll notice the 13th race is the same conditions as this race. So it was oversubscribed enough that they could fill 2 fields. This is my single A here. Folks, Jim, I will have you know I picked you at 12 second. So you are not alone in the favorite outlaw boat, Jim. And he will be a B for me. But I think this one has a 3-digit buyer, 2 back, figures to get a good trip on the rail from Raylu. Raylu and Calhoun are a formidable tandem. I think all systems go, and I like this horse an awful lot.
Before we move on, we got a lot of people in the chat that I haven't mentioned yet. Ross Blacker's here. He agrees with me on the odds of wet paint. Christine Race, thank you very much for the compliment. Sharpened to the very best on the internet. Hands down. Wow. Christine, as usual, our favorite viewer.
My favorite. She's always been my favorite, by the way.
Your check's in the mail, Christine, for the praise. Your check's in the mail.
Let's see. Penn State Scott says that he loves the value line exercise for strong favorites. Please add this to big favorite races. We will do so, Penn State Scott. And there's Jim Miller. There's one other comment that I saw in the chat that I think you may or may not want to see from our great viewer Sylvain.
Oh, bring it.
Sorry, Jim. The Astros are 10-0 in their last 10 openers. Jim, do you have a retort? And what's this update on the score?
Hey, it's scoreless in the 6th, so we're still in it. I'm perfectly fine with where we are right now. Dylan Cease is a guy that's going to be a Cy Young candidate. Hey, if you lose a game, you lose a game. They play 162, so I'm not too concerned.
Jim, I watched just the first at bat. I think it was the first at bat, and he blew away Bregman with a fastball up in the zone. And Bregman is a fastball hitter, and that was a mismatch. So I was very impressed.
Yeah, I mean, you're sitting there. You're at 5 1/3 innings pitched, and you have 8 strikeouts. That's a pretty good start. 68 pitches with 8 strikeouts too. So he's minimizing his pitches and going to get deep into the game on opening day.
Guys, I'm going with Breslau. I like his upside. He's improving. He's going to be sitting a good trip. I think Walter De La Cruz is a bit underrated. I know he's only 12%, but he doesn't get a lot of opportunities with high class horses. This is only a newly turned 4-year-old who's got plenty of rest in between. And my issue with the one, guys, I mean, I have the one in second, so it's not like I'm against the one. My only issue, Paul, is he's really only ran one big number, and that was a slow pace at Sam Houston. So he sort of has to prove it to me against better horses. That's just my thing about the one. The 12, who we haven't even mentioned yet, who's going to be the favorite. Jim, what is it that we don't like about the 12? Why don't we have the 12 on top? I'll let you speak for yourself.
I mean, I have the 12 second. It's just more the price more than anything. Outside
Okay.
posts, a 12 hole in a very good allowance field. And yeah, Arrieta, I mean, here's the thing. Chris Hartman's winning at a 32% clip. So, of course, Francisco Arrieta has to stick with this horse. But that's the only thing is it's an outside draw for a horse that has to at least sit close. So the biggest concern in a race like this, are you going to go and do the turn against really good horses sitting in the 4 or 5 path and losing ground the entire turn? Maybe, maybe not. We're going to find out. I'm going to use the horse on my pick 5 ticket, but just the reason why I don't have the horse on top.
Yeah, for me, he's burned a lot of money. I mean, he's probably going to win at 8-5, and we'll all look stupid trying to beat him. But he's burned a lot of money in the past, Jim. So, and that's a tough post. Although he does have tactical speed, obviously, to get there. So it'll be interesting, guys. We are at that time. It is. I don't even know how many runnings they've had of the Arkansas Derby. It's about to make a big pronouncement. This is the 83rd running. I don't even know. But anyway, it is the Arkansas Derby. It's a great one, guys. Every year, it's fantastic. We've got another big field. Let's go ahead and show right now. It is $1.3 million purse. Wow. That's incredible. It's a big field, of course. They're going 1.1 miles. It is a field of 11 this year, you can see the whole field there. The winner will get 50 points. I believe the winner gets 100 points. Excuse me. The winner gets 100 points. The second place finisher 50, and I think it's down to 40. Is that right, guys? After that, and then 30. I think that's what it is. 150, 40, 30. We should actually let's take a minute to talk about this, guys, because this is important. There's 1 or 2 horses from Japan that are going to be in the mix. I read today there's a possible horse from Europe that's going to qualify. This point level is going to be higher than it's been in quite a while, guys. Usually 30 has been the benchmark, Jim. It looks like it's going to be much higher because it already is a bit high, and we haven't even run 5 of the major Derby preps yet.
Well, and that's the thing about it. 20th right now in the Derby points is 25 points, and that's 20th. And you still have 5 races, and they're going all the way down to 5th now. So I think it's 140, 30, 20, 10. So you're going to have a whole lot of horses, a whole lot of movement this year. You're probably going to have to have 40 points to be into that top 20, I would think.
Yeah, so if you're first or second in these preps, you're almost assured. Third, pretty damn close, depending on how many you had going in. The Moorline favorite here is the number 8. Reincarnate. This is a horse for Yakteen, formerly trained by Baffert. And by the way, Paul, as I always listen to our shows back, you were absolutely right. Or Pete, I did say Pletcher Tuesday night, formerly trained. I was completely wrong about that. I'm man enough to admit that. I make mistakes. But Reincarnate was trained formerly by Baffert. Now Yakteen, 5-2. Johnny V is in the saddle for the race. Let me go ahead and switch the banners because I've not done that yet. There we go. Let's go to Jim. Jim, you are going to go with Reincarnate on top. This is a very talented horse who had a little bit of trouble in the Rebel last time.
Yeah, here's the weird thing about this race. Oaklawn Park does a great job with their Derby preps to get to the Arkansas Derby, yet you don't have the winner of the Southwest Arabian Night in here. You don't have the winner of the Rebel Confidence game in here, and I think that's part of the reason why you have such a large field. I found it a little bit interesting that Rocket Can chose this spot over the Florida Derby since they just ran second to Forte in their last out, and second would have easily put them into the Kentucky Derby. So that was the thing that was a little bit interesting as well. Reincarnate, and if you go back and look at the replay of that last race, it was an ugly stretch run for Reincarnate. This was a horse that had really pretty much a tough trip from start to finish.
Jim, do you want me to go right to the? I'm sorry. Do you want me to go right to the stretch or?
Before no. I mean, you can start from the gate first, and you can see how Reincarnate doesn't get out of the gate real well. The horse is coming from the 6 hole here, and things kind of squeeze up around the horse coming out of the gate. And this was a horse that I'm sure they wanted to get into the race a little bit more early on. So you'll see right here, off just a little slow. The 5 comes out, the 7 comes in, and all of a sudden you're shuffled back and you're sitting second to last early on. And the rider did a good job. Johnny V did a great job, just kind of settling back into the race. But then when you go into the stretch, this was a horse that was just looking for any type of room to go. And Confidence Game was the horse on the outside, the 7 horse that just kind of circled the field there and was able to just cruise around. You're going to see the 6 horse here. You're going to see Reincarnate kind of working its way in between in the blue cap there. He's coming behind the 5 here in the orange cap, tries to get outside, then gets squeezed back. Another horse comes in front. And now he really gets bothered there. But then watch when he gets into the clear, instead of just folding up and finishing 5th, okay, there's a little bit more run to this horse. The horse fires again, runs on late and is full of run. And I think that was the thing that was the most impressive to me, is sometimes with these young horses, they have to get a little education. Everything can't be perfect each and every time out. This horse got a whole lot of education in that race. So that means if things don't go perfectly here, I think this is a horse that can respond to a little bit of adversity. And maybe that's the reason why Reincarnate is sitting at 5-2. I think the horse will go much shorter. I think this is a horse that'll probably be 7-5, 8-5 in this race. But I like Reincarnate, just the way the horse did everything in that race when there was a whole lot kind of thrown against the horse, and finished up pretty well.
I have nothing to add. That was Red Route 1, by the way, finishing second. But Jim, I think it's pretty fair to say, if you really want to look at it objectively, he was just as good as Red Route 1, Route 1,
Yep.
if not better without the trouble. I think he finishes in front and maybe wins the damn thing. So I think you have some going there. I've got the horse second. Paul's got him third. Pete, you've got him third. So
that's not my right numbers.
Oh,
Remember.
I'm sorry, Pete. I forgot to ask you.
I don't have
Yeah,
him in the
Pete.
top 3 anyway, but that's okay. 6-7-4.
What?
6-7-4 for me.
No Reincarnate. Wow. Okay. I like it. Let's talk about the 6, Pete. You've got the 6. Whoop. Let me bring it up. You've got the 6. No, I didn't leave a space. Hold on a second. Jeez Louise. Okay, hold on. Here we go. I run it almost like, come on, Howard, get together. All right. Pete, you've got the horse 6. You have the 6 horse Angel of Empire in first. I've got the horse first, and I think, is that it? Wow. Okay, this is interesting. We definitely have varying opinions on this race. Angel of Empire, Pete, won the Risen Star, and I find it fascinating that Cox decides to go here instead of last week in Louisiana Derby. It's not a purse situation unless you consider $300,000 more. You know, that's the reason. I really don't think it is. So, Pete, why do you like this horse, and why do you think Cox chose to go here instead?
I'm not sure about the why. I don't really try and figure it out too much, because you can get bogged down in having an opinion that you think the trainer decided on, and it can be completely wrong. So you could just maybe skew your thinking. So I try not to get into that too much. The couple things I like, I have a soft spot for this one. I liked him last time, and he came through and he closed. And I just like the fact he's proven at 1 1/8, which we saw in the Risen Star. Obviously, the others in here are not yet. So at least we know, if nothing else, this horse can get the distance. You lose Saez, but you pick up Pratt, which is great. Cox has been, Cox is just sort of loaded going into the Derby. And I think this is one that's still potentially on the improve. And if we can get another step forward, I think he's right there with them. I mean, I think he's 9-2 for a reason. I think some of the others maybe are a little bit more established. Maybe their figures are a little higher, the things that drive a lower price. But I think this one can keep coming forward. The distance is only going to help. And you see he beat, out of the last race, at least 2 fills. Now 2 fills blew up on the synthetic, but he beat 2 fills, relatively decently in the Risen Star, and 2 fills has come back pretty strong as well. So that race has come back solid, not great. 2 fills is the only one who really came out strong out of it, but there's just a lot I like. I like the extra price. And against Reincarnate, Yakteen, I saw, if I'm looking at the number right, is like 0-15 outside of California, 0-15. So if you're looking for a knock on a favorite, I'll take that.
Look, the Baffert horses, former Baffert horses, have not been very good this year. Let's just call it like it is. They've really been disappointing. And like you said, especially outside of California. So, Reincarnate is talented, but they still haven't gotten the job done. I think I'll just make one comment, then Paul will get your opinion on Rocket Can and move on. In my mind, guys, I think the reason why Angel of Empire is here is Cox had, 3, I think, Louisiana Derby, who I believe were not his top horses and were less talented. And I think Cox knew that this race would come up stronger, which I think it did, than Louisiana Derby. So he's picking an easier spot for his easier horses to get into the Derby, and he picks a more difficult spot with one of his better ones, an Angel of Empire, who also has run well at Oaklawn in addition. Those were my thoughts. He's got to come from behind Paul. It's not going to be easy, but he can run all day, and Pratt's on him, and I like a lot of things about him. Another horse to like or to consider is a horse I'm a bit against, but I know some people like him. Pete's got him second, as does Jim. Rocket Can, Jim touched on him, finished a solid second to Forte, although I will say he got a perfect trip, but he still did run well. Maybe this is an improving horse for Mott and Alvarado that can get the job done in this $1.3 million event.
Well, I picked him on top. And to answer your first question, Howard, it's the 87th running of the Arkansas Derby.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Every year since 1936, except 1945. And to answer Jim's question, Frank Fletcher has been in racing for about 24 years. And, you hear sometimes guys like a Mike Rapoli would tell you probably if he could win one race, it might be the Belmont, which he did with Mo Donegal, having grown up in Queens and gone to St. John's and been a New York guy. Frank Fletcher probably would rather win the Kentucky Derby, but the Arkansas Derby is a very, very, very close second. He's only had 3 runners. He's run 3rd and 7th in the race. And I think it was an easy choice, because it's really not a terrible idea to get away from Forte either. There's no one who looks like Forte in this race. No disrespect to Reincarnate or any others. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a sentimental pick for me because it's Frank, who's a great guy, and Junior Alvarado, another great guy. But I do think, Howard, to your point, he kept running last time. He didn't pack it in, and Forte was just a runaway train in the stretch. He's got a 91. He can, 3rd start of his 3-year-old year, he could advance off that, and I think he has a chance to certainly be in the picture. Is he going to win? Well, I hope so, but I will definitely have him as an A on my ABC grid.
He's right here, and a horse we talked about on Tuesday, Mage, is the 7, who actually I thought ran much better than Rocket Can or Cyclone Mischief. This is Mage right here, who I know Pete and I think could be a factor in the Florida Derby if Forte stubs his hoof. But yeah,
Paul has Mage on top, doesn't he?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I wasn't allowed to talk about it, Pete. Don't bring it up.
Sorry. So
I hope, Pete, can you remind us when we do our the last word? Do not let me forget to mention the fastest horse in the world is on the undercard at Gulfstream.
Oh, yes,
Saturday.
yes. We have to talk
the
about
Howard
that.
Kravitz designated fastest horse in the world.
Is Flightline coming out of retirement?
Flightline would shudder if he had to get in the gate with that South American Flash O'Connor, please. Anyway.
But he is Irish, so you can't hate that.
Yeah,
Red
great
Route
name.
1, Red Route 1,
Mediocre
guys,
horse.
none of us has on top. This is a sucker horse to me, guys. I'm sorry. It's a sucker horse in this race. He's a sucker horse in the Derby. I'm sure he can win if there's a pace meltdown. He's got blinkers on, which I got to be honest, Jim, I don't love. I know a lot of people say, oh, now it's going to get him more into the game. I don't like major equipment changes in this bigger race. Jim, I'll let you have the only and final say about Red Route 1, and then we got to move on to the last race.
I mean, blinkers on is usually to help a horse keep its focus a little bit. I thought this horse ran perfectly focused in the last start, got an absolute dream trip on the inside behind what was a quick pace, and then came running late. I was a little surprised with that move. I'm not a huge fan when you're going into a grade 1 and putting the blinkers on either.
Hey, Jim, Asmussen, 0 for 14, first time blinkers in a graded stakes race. There you go.
No,
but can I say this for Steve? This is about the Derby, not about this race. Right. He needs to see if the blinkers are going to make a difference, and he could very easily go back. The blinkers, I believe, are about how this horse is going to run in the next race, not this.
And they have enough points probably to get in.
Right. I was going to say the same thing. But, he's probably in already, right?
And he does break. He does break like
any value.
He does break like 4 lengths behind the field all the time. So maybe he's trying to get him to break 2 lengths behind the field, Jim.
Pete, who are your top 3 in the last race, Pete?
In the last race, they are 1, 2, 6.
Okay. Let's go to the last race, guys, for just about 2 minutes. Show our pick fives and let Jim and I talk about Hawthorne. There's our picks in the last race. A lot of ones and twos, it looks like. Let me go. Whoop, no, I didn't want to do that. I want to actually stay right here. This is the split division, as Paul mentioned. It's an 125K allowance race. I'll bring it up on the screen. There it is. Except this one's 1 mile, guys. This is a 1 mile race. Again, N2X. You see this field of 12. Hey, got an Illinois bred there. Megan's Honor at the bottom of the screen, Jim, for Scott Becker and Arietta in a tough spot, 15-1. The Moorline favorite here are the two inside horses. The Moorline favorite is the number one, Knocker Down, Cox and Giroux. Pete and Paul, you've got both the source on top. Very quickly, Pete and Paul. Pete, will have you go first. Your opinion on Knocker Down.
Yeah, this was sort of a race where I didn't really like anybody, and I sort of landed. This one has the top buyers in the field. You look at two of the last three, the 88 and the 88, but it's not even that. If you go back, you see the 97, the 101, the 96. So this horse was just running much better pre-Brad Cox, which is funny because it usually goes the other way. So my thought with this one was, and those were at different tracks. So maybe, I don't know if it's the track, I don't know what it is, but if we can get this one back to that prior form, and it wasn't like it was that long ago. I mean, you're talking November 22. If we can get back to that form, it towers over this field. So at 5-2, you don't love taking a chance on that, but it's Brad Cox. Cox Giroux, 37% wins, 80% in the money in allowance route races at Oaklawn. So, super successful when they team up pretty much under any circumstance. But in a race, I just didn't love anyone. I sort of just landed on this one as my top choice. So not the strongest opinion in the world, but
not the
I'd
best
love
endorsement, but
yeah,
the old
I do
default button for Pete.
I do want to ask Jim later about that Hawthorne horse because I actually was a little intrigued and I wanted to get his opinion on that horse when we get to it.
Okay, we'll get to it. By the way, Christine Race said O'Connor was her worst bet of 2023.
Because she listened to Howard.
I was going to say, wait, Christine,
where did you get the idea to bet O'Connor? I mean, who are you
Christine,
listening to on
how
the
come
show,
you didn't
Christine?
put on Howard's recommendation, O'Connor was my worst
All
bet.
right, so I was wrong. God forbid I was wrong about a horse. Jesus.
I
Paul,
think twice in counting with that horse, but that's okay.
Yeah.
It can happen. It might happen a third time this weekend. Who knows? Except he's got IRAD this weekend. That might make a difference. Paul, you like Knocker Down also.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, Howard, I'm 8. If you look at my caveman when we get to it, I am 8 deep out of 12 in this race.
Wow.
So that should disqualify me from giving an opinion.
All right. Well, Jim, let's just go to the two then. You and I have 50-cent dollars. This is the other morning line horse that's being bet 3-1. Hartman, your guy you just mentioned, and Juarez. Looks like an improving horse. Seems honest. Runs every time. I see nothing wrong with him.
I'm 5 deep in here too, so that shows how I feel about the race.
Yeah.
Can I mention this? I hate short stretch races. I hate secondary wire races because it completely changes. Everybody's got to start moving in the turn a little bit. To me, it means a little bit more of a front end race. So that's kind of how I played this race. The one note you had asked about Megan's Honor. Here's the thing that's kind of interesting about Megan's Honor. There's been multiple races, and this is an Illinois bred horse. There's been multiple races at Hawthorne where this horse could have come in and easily won and probably earned, say, somewhere around 32,000 for the victory going 2 turns. Instead, they stay here and get one more start here for the meet, and it's a $125,000 pot. You're not going to do that and come in just to give the horse a race when there's other options where you probably would have been 8-5, somewhere around there at Hawthorne. So Megan's Honor is a very honest racehorse. It's a horse that I am going to include on my ticket, and I think you'll get every bit of that 15-1.
Thanks, Jim. I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, and then the bomb 2 back was on in the slop, and aside from that has been pretty consistent. Yeah. And you're getting a pretty nice. And Becker Arietta have been on fire when they team up. Not in a huge sample size, but they've been on fire together in the past few months. So
that's a reverse tri-key horse for me, Howard. The 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice. Nice.
I have that written down. I'm a little bit interested in efficiency, as is Jim. Jim, we're not going to talk about it together, but I just like the blinkers on. I like Pratt. I don't like the post, but he's an improving horse. I have mad respect for Jerry Hollandover. And I think if Pratt can work out a trip, this horse is interesting. That is not an ideal post, Jim, in this situation, is it?
No, not an ideal post by any means. And again, when you have to show speed and you're putting the blinkers on, there's really one option. Go out there, try to wing it and try to cross over and get some sort of position into that first turn. But again, 6-1, if you can get the 6-1, I think it's at least worth a use on the ticket.
Yeah, he might hurt my 2, and I have both those as A's. I might need to rethink that because I hate having 2 horses with the same style in an ABC gym who they both maybe might need the lead. So as I think about that out, that's the great thing about this show, right, guys? We hear, we think, we're like, oh, maybe I need to make an adjustment, but we'll see. The pick 5s. Here we go, everyone. At home, strap it in. Be ready to write it down, or at least see the counter on the YouTube channel video so you can watch the replay of this. We're going to go very quickly, guys. Jim's pick 5. Jim Miller, the pick 5 at Oaklawn on Saturday. The late pick 5. 1-3-5-9 with 6, with 1-2-5-7-12, with 8, with 1-2-9-11-12. It's a $50 ticket. He's going spread, single, spread, single, spread. I love that idea here, singling Wet Paint and Reincarnate. Jim, hit it.
I think they're the 2 best horses. I think Wet Paint's an absolute standout in the fantasy. I like Reincarnate a lot. So for me, I think you can get some coverage in some other spots with some good prices. And because you have big fields for the sequence, you'll still get a good return.
I like the ticket. You'll see my ticket, Jim. We have similar ideas here. Paul's ticket is $96. It is 2-5-8 with 1-3-5-6 with 1, with 7-8. With 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 9, 11. Paul, if you are alive to your caveman pick 5s in Florida and Arkansas that you've given out in the show, you could have a huge weekend, sir. Talk about your ticket.
Well, I do, it was funny how when I was typing it up to send to you, I said, boy, this is like very similar to what I did in Florida. But I do really think that one is the most likely winner right in the middle of the sequence. And, where I agree with Jim. I think Reincarnate and Wet Paint are both highly likely winners, but just looking for some separation and looking to be, if I do get alive, you can all go bet the other 4 horses in the last race and you'll be assured to cash.
There you go. I like the single at the 1. I mean, I don't have the single, the 1 single, but I like in a big field where you just go with the single. So I do like that. Pete, I just noticed your private chat, but I apologize. So Pete, why don't you just say it and I will rattle off for you. Say it slowly, Pete, if you could, and I'll type it in, then we'll talk. Go ahead.
Sure. First leg, 1-5-9.
Yep.
With 1-3-6.
Yep.
With 1-2-12.
Okay.
With 4-6-7.
Hold on.
Yep.
4-6-7. Yep. Go ahead.
With 1-2.
1-2. Okay. Let's not make that 12. And how much is that, sir?
$81.
$81 as usual, under budget for Pete Visco.
Yes,
81. Sir. Boom. And I didn't press save, did I? I did. We're good.
We're
okay,
good.
Pete. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I was, when I did my first ticket, I was closer to sort of Paul's, where I had some just deep legs, and especially that last couple, or the last one, and I think maybe the first or second, or the first one. But, chopping it down to get under budget, I wound up just not spreading in each race, but I didn't have a single. Obviously, you could single Wet Paint. You could maybe do that on like an ABC as well, put Wet Paint on the A line and put the longer shot towhead on the B line if you're really inclined. And then from there, it was just, I'm not against Reincarnate winning the race, but I wanted to go with, I like Angel of Empire. I sort of like Rocket Cam, and I like the 4, who is Two Eagles River, who we never talked about. That was sort of my price. That was sort of my price, maybe, since it's not the strongest field with not a guaranteed sort of superstars in it. I thought maybe a horse like the 4 at morning line 10-1 can jump up. And then in the last race, I was all over the place, landed on the 1-2, but I was ready to spread also as well. Like if I was doing an ABC, I'd almost have 2/3 of the field minimum.
Yeah, I know I showed a comment from Jason Casa, but Jason, thanks for joining the show. We always want to especially point out our new viewers, and we have so many new viewers. It's just fantastic. We already have a big audience. We got a lot of new people. So Jason Casa, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Thanks for joining the show. All right, Jim, before I show my pick 5, and don't go anywhere, by the way, because we are talking about Hawthorne's late pick 4 on Sunday with Jim Miller in about a few minutes, guys. So do not go anywhere after we're done talking about Oaklawn. My pick 5, Jim, I always ask Pete and Paul to predict if I have a single on my ticket and who it is. So I'll leave it open to everyone. Actually, why don't we put Jim on the spot, Pete and Paul? Jim, do I have a single in the sequence, and who is it?
You do have a single. For sure you do, and it will be Wet Paint.
Any other singles?
No. I think you're only singling once in this ticket. Although when I've watched you play the Breeders' Cup pick 6, I know that you took some stances at some times, but I'm calling one single for you on the ticket.
Jim, remember you went spread, single, spread, right?
Yep.
Does that idea look a little bit familiar?
It's
there it is on the bottom of the screen. Jim Miller and I are thinking not the same horses, but the same idea, which I think is important to mention for the viewers and listeners. I've got 2, 4, 5 with 6, with 1, 2, 5, 7, 9, 12, with 6, 8, with 1, 2, 7, 9, 11. It's a $9 ticket. Guys, I wish I could spread more in the first race, but if it's not the 5 and it's not my Q2, I thought maybe the 4. I mean, you could go 8 deep, but you got to take a stance somewhere. Jim snuffed me out. Wet Paint to me is the goods. I also like Just Reincarnate and Angel of Empire. You got Speed and a closer there, Jim, so I'll go with those 2 and spread in the other 2. It's a $90 ticket. Guys, it's going to be an incredible sequence. Pete and Paul, you guys have the last word on Oaklawn or anything else this weekend, and we'll move along. Paul, is it Secretariat's birthday literally today?
53 years ago today.
Wow. That is
all debates about the second greatest horse who ever lived can take place on the podcast at another time.
I hear you. Pete, any final thoughts about Oaklawn or anything else this weekend?
No, nothing yet. Paul, did you want to mention Tapit Trice on the pod just to buck the Twitter commentary, or no? You didn't want to mention
we've been told. No, we haven't been told. We've been scolded that Howard and I are talking about Tapit Trice. So my reaction was, apparently we can't talk about the Bluegrass next week because he's running in the Bluegrass next week.
Oh, we can put the Bluegrass on Bettin and Boozin, so you guys don't have to talk about it.
Okay, well, I would be happy to not say another word other than we win on May 6th.
Hey, listen, that guy can only talk crap if he does not have a 5-digit score on Tapit Trice. So listen, I'm gonna get excited. I'm not gonna hide my excitement. Jim, I know you like that horse. We talked about him last week. Pete and Paul, we're going to let you guys go so Jim and I can chop up the late pick 4 at Hawthorne.
Go really Sox, Jim.
Guys.
Losing 1-0 though, sadly, but hey, we're okay.
That's
season.
right. They'll come back. Pete and Paul, thanks, guys. Take care. Have a
Thank
good night.
you.
See you guys.
Right, bye-bye. All righty. Jim, you and I, sir, we got to switch the banner here to the wonderful background of Hawthorne Racecourse. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. There we go, sir. We are now at Hawthorne.
Love it.
There we go. So, by the way, it looked like the Sox had runners on first and second, the top of the 7th, and were threading, couldn't score. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, they ended up. It was bases loaded. Bases loaded, then they were strikeout. So,
yeah.
And then my least favorite reliever for the White Sox just came in and threw a bases loaded wild pitch with 2 outs. So.
Oof. By the way, you want to give a shout out to Nancy Holdhouse. I know that you mentioned her, off air.
Yeah.
She's an excellent commentator at Oaklawn and friend of yours as well.
She is. She's my best friend in the world. We've been friends for 30 plus years. I talk to her. I check in with her just to kind of see more how the track's playing than anything and how things are going to be affected weather-wise. So that's something that you definitely want to focus on because they definitely are expecting rain for tomorrow's card, but they are also expecting it to stop early enough that they're going to be just fine for the card on Saturday. If they do have to curb the training hours a little bit, they will, to be able to give themselves a little bit more time to get that track ready for the races. So expect a fast service for Arkansas Derby Day.
Great. They've had a lot of rain there this spring, so I'm sure they're happy on a big day to have a dry track. Jim, before we chop up the pick 4, real quick, there's some contest information. People can play free contests for Hawthorne. I'm always pushing that with you guys because you do a tremendous job. And I'm sure many people would love to enjoy the same experience I had in Vegas a few weeks ago at the NHC. Quickly talk about what you guys have going on for people to qualify for the NHC.
It's an NHC qualifying spot too for this contest, and it's free to sign up for, and it's just something to have a little bit of fun. So starting on Sunday's card, we're going to have a little bit of an extended contest where we're covering the 4th race each day, and then we're covering another race later on the card, I believe the 7th each day. It's just a $2 win play show wager. You pick a horse in each of those races, you build that bankroll. We're going to have nice prizes along with the NHC seat as well, but it's something cool to just kind of follow along with the card. And the big thing that we've been pushing all day long is the 12% takeout on win play show wager. So it's more money into the pocket of the player. That's something that's very important for us as well. And it's really paid off. Handle's been up early on in the meet. We're starting to get more horses in from New Orleans. We'll get some horses in from Oaklawn as well. But this, again, it's a fun contest. It's free. Just go to the website, hawthorneracecourse.com. You can sign up right there. And then just going to pick horses all the way through over the course of a couple of months. Have a lot of fun. Keep that leaderboard there. And again, it is, yes, free contest for you as well. Anybody that wants to go to the website.
We allow the Canadians in the contest, of course.
Anybody that wants to go to the website. And then, of course, we're always going to have our contests later on over the course of the year for the NHC qualifiers. But again, when you have a free shot to get in, why not? Just jump in and pick some horses over the course of the meet.
Absolutely. Sign up for that. Let's go ahead and talk about the late pick 4, Jim. I decided to put a scroll on the bottom with all of your picks. I thought that would be easier for the viewers. So Jim's top 3 selections are on the bottom of the screen for the 4 races. We're just going to talk about 2 minutes on each race. Let's talk about these races. Race 5 starts the late pick 4 on Sunday. Again, this is Sunday at Hawthorne. We've talked ad nauseum as to why Hawthorne goes on Sunday. It's a great idea. They want to avoid all the major tracks and get a better handle. It's a maiden 15 claimer. They're going 2 turns, 1.70 yards. Fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. You see it's a field of 8, and you're going 5-7-4, Jim Miller, in this race.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing. Like I just mentioned, you're starting to get horses back from New Orleans already. They ended their meet last Sunday, and you have a horse in here in the 5, Unbridled Ansley, who is one of those horses who was racing at the fairgrounds, claimed for $15,000, 3 back. Sprint races stretching out to go a route here, but Gary Scherer, a very good trainer. This is a horse that I think fits well going 2 turns. And this is a race where there's not a whole lot of pace in the race, Howard. The 7 Lotta Roses, probably going to show some speed. But when you've had 12 opportunities to get that maiden score and you've disappointed numerous times, will I include the horse on the ticket? Yes. But I think you can try to catch some prices to try to defeat this horse. Pretty and Prado can show a little bit of speed, but I think Unbridled Ansley on the stretch and distance probably goes out there, shows some speed, and it's definitely fit coming into this race as well.
I'm trying to look up the weather on Sunday, Jim. Do you know off the top of your? I know it's going to be warming up in this area the next.
Yeah, I think we're going to be okay.
It's
supposed to be a little bit rainy tomorrow, and then start to warm up a little bit.
57 and sunny.
Okay, and as the track gets warmer, here's a couple of things you take into regard to. The track evens out. When it's cold, it's a speed track. It's an inside track. We've had a lot of those winds out of the west, which is a headwind in the lane, which leads to more speed. As it warms up, the winds shift to coming from the south, so it's a crosswind. It's a track you can get a lot of water into. It drains very well, but it definitely evens out for how the track will play too.
Real quick question for you, Jim, from Jason again, the bottom of the screen. How do you determine when second finish line is in effect? Is it just memorizing a given track's rules, or is there some indication in the form? Jim, I'll let you talk about that.
There's usually an indication in the form, and it's very hard to see because it's just a little line that they put a little bit earlier in the stretch. And we're familiar with this only for the fact that Arlington Park was a track that implemented this as well. And Arlington Park was a very big oval. It was 1 1/8 oval. And horsemen used to run 1 1/8, and it wasn't a problem at all. And you'd get that full run of the stretch. And then they decided, okay, we can't go 1 1/8, but we want to go 1 1/16. Well, the only way to implement that was the short stretch. So it was the earlier wire in the stretch. And Oaklawn Park's very similar. Oaklawn Park's been there for a very long time, over 100 years. So because of that, their track really can't change for the complexion or composition or the distance of the racetrack, but horsemen want to run a mile race. They don't have a chute there that's able to extend to 1 mile. And if you don't want to go 1 1/16, this is the only way you can do it. It's a short stretch race, which means it's a 1/16 of a mile shorter to the finish line. Makes it a lot harder for horses to close in races like that. There's only a couple of tracks like that But Arlington Park was one of them, and Oaklawn is one of the very few remaining like that.
I also want to say, listen, I know a lot of people that, not a lot, but some people do not bet Hawthorne. I mean, we get a little drop off, small drop off at the end of the show
Sure.
after Oaklawn, just we did tonight. If just because you're not familiar with Hawthorne, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't mean you should be afraid to bet this track. They have higher quality races coming up, as I'm sure Jim will allude to with the racing secretary and more the influx of more horses coming in. There are biases just like any other track that you could really make money on. Jim Miller is on every Thursday night with us for quite a while here, I believe, as long as we'd like to have him. Dakota Schultz gives us the go. So if you are a fan of the show, keep watching, learn the track, and start playing it because you can make a lot of money. Let's go on to the race 6, Jim. It's allowance optional. There we go. Optional 50,000 claimer. Nice field here. 31.5 is the purse. They're going 5.5 furlongs. This is an it's the N1X. Yep. It's a small field of 6, but look at the morning lines that you've created. It's a very competitive field. You're going 1-3-6. One of the Ravellis with Mojica, first time Lasix, a Florida bred specializing.
Well, and that's the thing that's interesting. You talk about the quality of races. Here's where these horses came from for their last start: Churchill, Kentucky Downs, Oaklawn Park, Gulfstream Park, Turfway Park, and Fairgrounds. So it's a quality bunch here. And Larry Ravelli does have 2 in this race. I'm thinking in this spot, you're going to see Specializing run for sure. There's a little question as to if Move It Baby goes or not, because they just have one work coming into this race. But Specializing was a horse that they claimed for 50. Patricia's Hope is one of the owners or part of the group that owns 2 fills that's heading to the Kentucky Derby. They're not afraid to spend money on good horses. And then we know some of the other guys in the ownership. Frank Mastario is the guy who is a very good tournament player. Mike Mulvihill.
Frank who?
Frank Mastari. Yeah, you know.
I'm just kidding.
You know.
I hear he's got a son that's pretty good at playing.
Justin knows his stuff as well too. Yeah, Justin's done pretty well for himself too.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, he
that
does.
Justin
okay.
guy.
So here's the thing too. I think I'm expecting Specializing runs. It wouldn't surprise me if Move It Baby scratches. So Specializing's a horse that probably from the inside goes, and there's not a ton to go with this horse. So if that's the case, and the inside still is okay, I think this is a horse that should run on very well. The horse has worked well coming in here. Ravelli thought enough of this horse to send it down to Florida to continue training throughout the course of the winter, and they find really kind of a dream spot for them because it is. You don't get a whole lot of races for just 3-year-old fillies at this point of the year at this condition. I think this is a great spot for Specializing.
Let's go on to race 7. Race 7 is an allowance race, 6 furlongs, the penultimate leg of the pick 4. This is for filly and mares, N1X. This is a field of 9. Yep. Nice field. The Moorline favorite is the number 3, First Kitten, a horse that we've mentioned on this show before, but you're going 9-7-3. You're going with the Illinois bred Journeyist for Michelle Boyce, an excellent trainer, and Constantine Roman.
And here's the thing about Journeyist that I'm kind of curious to see. That's first Lasix for this horse in career start number 11. But this is a horse that tailed off in those last 3 starts, Howard. I tend to wonder, and sometimes horses just bleed a little bit. They call it spotting, when the horse is just kind of spotting a little bit there for bleeding. And maybe they were trying to figure out, why did those performances just kind of go downhill over the course of 3 races? This could be what it is. This could be what turns things around for Journeyist. The horse has good tactical speed, and Michelle Boyce has 3 works into this horse and a race into this horse coming into the spot. The addition of Lasix could be the key, and I think you get every bit of that 5-1.
It looks like it's a competitive field. Jim does the morning lines, by the way, as well. So I love that Jim is honest with his opinions, because he could handicap based on the morning lines, but he doesn't do that because he's an honest guy, does a great job, and so he'll tell you what you think.
And it's a great question, because people do ask that, Howard, all the time. Oh, you set the line. Why aren't you picking that horse? Well,
right.
I set the line for how I believe the betting public is going to pick the race, and then I handicap the race for how I expect it to run. And it's 2 completely different things. And I'll tell you this too: when I handicap races, I will always handicap them on a set of past performances that don't have a morning line on them too.
Yeah, I've been doing that more and more, Jim, and it's been very effective for my handicapping for sure. And that's what morning line. We've had Nick Tam around. We've had other morning line makers. That is David Aragona. That is exactly what a morning line maker does: predict what the public thinks they're going to be at post time, not what they actually themselves think based on handicapping. The last race of the pick four, Jim, is for Illinois breds, maidens, 6 furlongs. I want to recognize, is this for 3-year-olds? Sorry, I was looking at the, and older? Is it 3-year-olds and up?
3 and up,
3-year-olds
3 and up. Yep.
Okay, 3 and up. Yep. 6 furlongs. Another big field of 9. Moreline favorite is the number 3. Be My Bestie. Great name for, there you go, Ravelli and Mojica.
Right.
You have that horse in second. You're going with 2 Royal for Manley and Victor Santiago, second choice with your morning lines at 4-1.
You know what? It's just a post move here more than anything. 2 Royal was stuck in the 9 hole of a field of 9 in that last out. Had to push things along there the entire way around and still hung in until late in the lane. Now you go into post number 4, but the other thing too, you find a field that doesn't have nearly the pace of what we saw in that last out. This is a horse that should be able to scamper away, should be able to get loose on the front end. And if that's the case, I think Be My Bestie is probably chasing in this spot, but I think 2 Royal has the potential to go out there and possibly wire this field. And when you talk about making morning lines, Larry Ravelli in Chicago is always going to take money. That's one thing you just kind of have to look at. And it's one of the things, and he's deserved it. He's definitely deserved it with numerous training titles, but it's something that you have to kind of take into effect when you make a line too.
No, you definitely have to take connections. A lot of people, especially people that are more amateur or less experienced, or read the old green sheet or your
Oh yeah.
typical nonsense that's out there. I'm sure you guys put out great info, but you know what I mean. I mean, sort of the amateurish kind of things that are out there. Oh, it's Ravelli, so he must be live. I mean, probably, but not necessarily. Let's go to your pick 4. Your pick 4 is on the bottom of the screen, Jim. 4, 5, 7. Got to talk. I got to say it out loud for the audio listeners. 4, 5, 7 with 1, 3. With 379, with 346. It's a $27 ticket. Explain your thinking in this sequence, Jim.
Yeah, it's just a 15% takeout on the pick 4. So you have the potential to make a little bit of money in this spot, but with some larger fields in there, really, I think the race that you just have to make sure that you get right is race number 6. And specializing will be tough. But Lux Me, we just mentioned Scott Becker over for a horse at Oaklawn Park in Megan's honor there in that final race. He knows what he's doing too and wins at a very high percent clip. And he's got a horse that's 2 for 2 coming in this spot. And this was a horse he claimed for 20 at Churchill and then ran at Oaklawn Park and won. So I had to use that horse in there as well. I think we have enough coverage in the other races with enough prices that this is a sequence. And the way Hawthorne pays, if you just beat a couple of favorites over the course of that pick 4 sequence, you're going to get a very nice return. It's what I've seen there just with a lot of years of experience at that track, almost 30 now. So we'll see what we get out of the pick 4. But for $27, I think it's pretty good value.
You're old, man. 30 years? Holy cow.
I started racing when I was 17. I'm 47 right now.
Man, you're a youngster. I got you by a few still. Jim, before we close the show here, I know you're a really busy guy, and I really appreciate you taking all the time. Hope you enjoyed listening to Jim for Oaklawn and Hawthorne, of course. Quick thoughts on the Florida Derby. I mean, we talked about it on Tuesday. I'm not going to show the field, but Forte is the obvious favorite. Yeah. How much should people be concerned about the 11 hole? None. That was a big conversation. It's the 11 hole's 0 for 10 on the last 10 races, but this horse just lays over the field. I personally am not concerned. And the other reason I'm not concerned, Jim, is he's not a speed horse. I think he'll just break normally and he'll be wide, which is absolutely fine because he'll be in the clear and he'll just blow by him on the turn. And he doesn't have to be all out to win this race. That's my opinion. What say you?
I want to go over those other races too and see if there's anybody near the caliber of Forte that was breaking from post 11 in any of those races.
Exactly.
The horse is the best horse in the race. The horse, I think, wants to stay in the clear, and I think they're going to stay in the clear. A 3-wide trip is perfectly fine. They have enough points to get into the Derby. I still think this is an incredible racehorse. He just seems to win in hand time and time again, and it's not a great race, Howard, aside from Forte. Forte, the last 4 buyers for Forte are better than any other horse has ever run in the race in their career. It's a very solid racehorse. I don't care about the post. They handicap harness races at times where very good horses get the 10 hole and 5 or 6 horse fields. They could have put Forte out in the 14, 15, 16 hole in this race and it wouldn't have mattered at all.
As Paul Howard said Tuesday, you could put this horse in the parking lot to start. It might not matter.
Let him hang by the Pegasus statue to start. And he'll probably still beat this field.
The Derby right now, Jim, is definitely going through Todd Pletcher. He might have the best horses, a collection of horses he's ever had between Forte, Kings, Barnes, and of course our favorite, Tapit Trice, he's got a big shot to win the Derby this year. Jim, as we close out the show and let you watch the end of the Sox game, any final thoughts on any of the tracks we talked about, or just anything in general going forward?
Yeah, two final thoughts. First off, it was cool seeing Pete had a shirt with Zenyatta. And the reason I mentioned that is a lot of times it's very hard for very good horses to be off the pace horses, and Zenyatta was one of the greatest ever. And Wet Paint could be a horse. I'm not saying Wet Paint Zenyatta by any means, but I'm saying you can be a very good horse and be an off the pace horse. So that's the first thing. The second thing, we're very fortunate at Hawthorne to have a Derby horse on the grounds. I saw 2 fills in the flesh today out there on the track galloping. He's a very good looking racehorse. He's not going to be given any respect in the Derby. I'm not saying he's going to win because I don't know if he's going to win or not, but he's also going to be 15, 20, 25 to 1 in the Derby. So because of that, I think you're going to have to include him. And the one thing I asked Larry Ravelli about, I said, Larry, there's 20 horses in the race. When they draw posts, is there anything that you're going to dread? He said, not at all. I don't care at all. He said, all that this horse wants to do is be covered up by one other racehorse in the race. And if it's the right racehorse, he'll follow him around and hopefully run on by in the lane. So that's a good thing. There's some confidence with everything the horse is doing right now, but he's a horse that definitely looks the part. He's a horse that's done everything right, at least leading into it now. That was a very good effort last week. Hopefully it translates to a good race on the first Saturday in May.
I'm not sure about those odds, Jim. That was a huge figure received. I think he might be one of those wise guy horses in the low teens. We'll have to see. He's going to have to run, the race of his life on dirt. He's run decent on dirt, but he still hasn't exploded on dirt. But he's got a great tactical style, right, Jim? He's got the exactly kind of the epicenter, always dreaming.
Yeah.
You name it. I'll have another kind of stocky kind of trip, and he doesn't have any issues breaking. If he had proven himself on dirt really well, I would really like him. I'm not so sure about that, but everything else I love about the horse.
The good thing is he's already run at Churchill, and he's run a decent race at Churchill too. So that's a definite plus. The other thing, you kind of look at a race like this, and you tend to wonder what you're going to get price-wise and value-wise, but also because you're going to have Forte this weekend, if somebody happens to run a really big race at Arkansas, and then you have the 3 preps next week, that you kind of get the recency type of thing. And that's where maybe you're going to get a little bit more chatter about some other horses leading up to the race. We'll see. I mean, again, I'm going to be cheering for them. I like the fact that they've run over that racetrack in the past, and you never know. And the other thing that Ravelli said, the final thought on this horse, he was worried that they were going to be having to set down for a big, long stretch drive battle to try to get enough points to get into the Derby. And he said not only did they not have to do that, said the horse was cruising under the wire, and Loveberry said he had a ton of horse left late and didn't have to work that hard to do it. So a lot of positives, and we'll see if this translates in a few weeks.
I am fully convinced after last year, Jim, there just won't be a lot of big long shots. I mean, I don't know if we're going to see anyone about 50 to 1, and there's going to be a lot of horses who are going to be 25 to 1 who should be 100 to 1, who have no business, because everyone's like, well, look what happened last year. It was the Rich Strike. Blah, blah, blah. I think this Derby, you might get the most interesting betting of any Derby we've ever had. And when I say interesting, I sort of mean bad money, but that's
because everybody's going to throw a few bucks on the longest price. And I see, Penn State Scott says value line for Forte. I don't know if there's going to be value. I mean, the horse I think will probably go off at 2 to 5. If you want value, maybe it's 4 to 5 in there. But here's the thing.
Florida Derby, of course, we're talking about.
Yeah, the Florida Derby, right.
Kentucky, right.
Right. But if Forte wins the Florida Derby the way that everybody expects Forte to win the Florida Derby, he might be 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 in the Kentucky Derby, even if there's 20 in there, don't you think?
Nope.
What do you think he's going to be?
5 to 2.
Really?
There's just too many horses in there, Jim, that people are going to be betting.
Right.
He should, but again, we got play. Jim's like me. We could talk for another. How much time do we have left? We'll talk about it, Jim. In fact, if you're willing, we'll get.
I want to come on and talk about this because we're gonna put lunch on the line or something. That if he wins the Florida Derby impressively, I think he'll be sub 2 to 1 in the Kentucky Derby.
We will put a small. We'll bet. What do you got there? Good Polish. What do you got there at the Hawthorne rate?
We'll go get a Nashville Street Polish. I mean, we'll get the best Polish, and that's fine.
All right, we'll put a bet on that. It'll be interesting to see. But you forgot, Jim, the TT horse that we're not supposed to mention, that we mentioned too much, is going to explode in the bluegrass, and he might be around 4-1 in the Derby. So anyway, we'll see. For my good friend, Jim Miller, appreciate it. This has been your host, Howard Kravitz. It's been episode 242. Again, we had a lot of fantastic announcements. If you missed them, go to the beginning of the show with our media credential announcement and also our partnership with the Crowns Way Racing. Really appreciate it. Good luck to everyone in your bets at Oaklawn Park and, of course, at Hawthorne on Sunday, everyone. Have a fantastic weekend. Take care and good luck as I try to find where's my closing? Oh, no. Hold on a second. Oh, we're screwing it up here. I can't find the closing montage. Oh, there it is. I found it. Good luck with your bets this weekend. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.